All right, welcome everybody. This is Chef Bravo here at the at my place of work, True North Health Center, and I'm recording another video for you for Bravo Plant-Based Channel and BravoPV.com as well. So I got myself a nice audience here who will ask some good questions, because that seems to be where the best part of the demos and lectures come in, when people ask questions, because these guys have questions which match a lot of the questions you guys have, and since you're not here you can't ask, but then one of these guys will. So sound good? Yeah. All right, so what I'm going to do today for you is I'm gonna assemble a couple of salads for everybody. And these are going to be in large volume. Sometimes I have to double up. So you guys are eating quite a bit. So, Mauricio said, hey chef, we need some more salads there for the salad bar area. And so that's why I'm making them in large quantities, so to feed these guys right here. So at home, just make them smaller. Sound good? Okay. So, and this is sort of like, how do I assemble a salad? Come on in. How do I assemble a dish when maybe I don't have a recipe and I'm just going off of what I have at home? Or maybe I want to adjust a recipe, or maybe I just want to understand why this recipe has these particular ingredients. And so this is what this particular demonstration is about, giving you guys sort of the thought process, so that when you don't have these exact ingredients, or the exact ingredients in whatever recipe you might be looking at, you might go, okay, I know how I'm going to tweak it and it's still going to work. Make sense? Yeah. Okay, so we're going to switch camera angle, because everybody knows what I look like now. So we're going to focus here on the board. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys here. I'm going to make a very simple tomato and cucumber salad. Something that you've probably eaten, something you've probably made, something you've probably had many times. Okay? Well, I'm going to explain to you each component and why it's there. And if you don't happen to have either or, you'll know how to substitute. Sound good? Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I have here a large quantity of cucumbers and tomatoes diced. So I'm just going to go through the motions here real quick. In order to get some eye appeal into the cucumbers, what we do is we take a peeler and we take 5 strips away. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now my cucumber's got the sort of zebra kind of thing going on, which just gives it a little bit more, it just looks nicer. It's just a little bit more interesting. Okay, so from there I'm gonna cut the tips. Okay, and then I'm gonna cut it in half this way. All right, now with salads, I always like to try to think, I don't want any component in there that is too big, that it's bigger than a, bite size kind of a thing. So although these are sort of large-ish, you can certainly, stab it with a fork and put that in your mouth, and you wouldn't be like, trying to open wide to try to fit it in. Yep. So from there, I decide, okay, I could just go straight down and make these sort of half moons, which would be okay. But I'm going to show you guys a little something different. Maybe you've seen this before, maybe you haven't, I don't know. So I now have quarters. Now I could just go straight down and end up with these quarter round kind of thing. But I always like to add a little bit of a sort of an angle. So this is what's called a bias cut. So rather than, and I'm doing this awkwardly so that the camera can catch it and you guys can see it. So rather than go straight, I actually angle my knife. You can angle it this way, or I can angle it this way, okay? And so what happens is, again, I'm doing this in an awkward way so that you guys can see what's happening. So by doing that, I increase sort of the surface area, but I also give it sort of this, again, this bias cut. So you see the difference between one that's just straight down. There we go. It just has a little bit more of a angle. It's just a little bit more interesting. So that's how I did the ones that I have here. And one more, okay? So that's how that happens. For the tomato, I always make sure I take the stem part out, and I use this cool little tomato core little tool. So that gets rid of that. And I like to get rid of that because it's sort of on the tougher side. It's kind of tough to chew on.
These are Roma tomatoes?
These are Roma tomatoes. So I did just quarters, and again, you know, this is a little bit too big to try to fit in your mouth. So we go half. And that's all I did. Okay. So now, let us break down the sort of the thought process here a little bit. And again, I'm making large quantities because you guys are eating a lot. At home, you probably could get away with 3 tomatoes, 3 cucumbers, and that's a good size, okay? So, when putting a salad together or any other dish, okay, there are 3 things that I'm always chasing or, you know, trying to accomplish. And that is a combination of colors, flavors, and textures, okay? Not a, you know, tomato will always go good with a cucumber kind of a thing, all right? So, there we go, come on. So, right away, the first thing that I've accomplished is make sure that I got a good contrast of colors, okay? It's sort of a Christmassy type of thing. You know, Christmas always looks nice because there's a lot of green and red that come together, okay? This is a good sort of eye appeal kind of thing. To that, I also have a couple of different textures here. I have something that's soft, okay, tomato, and then the cucumber is slightly on the crunchy side, okay? So medium, we'll call it a medium sort of texture. Soft, sort of medium, you know, something like a jicama, that would be a hard, crunchy, okay? So the cucumber is sort of in between, okay? We also have a sort of a tart texture, flavor here with the tomato. Depending on the time of year, the tomatoes might actually be sweet. Right now we are in winter, so the tomatoes are more on the tart side, a little bit more acidity. Come summertime, they will be sweeter, okay? But so that's what I have. I have a tart flavor here. And this cucumber here has a sort of a fresh, crisp sort of texture, fresh flavor. I would categorize this more in the savory kind of flavor, okay? So out of just 2 ingredients, I have 6 things here, okay? I have red, I have green, I have tart, I have savory, I have soft, and I have medium texture. Okay, 2 ingredients, 6 things. Make sense? Mm-hmm. So far so good?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you're putting a salad together at home, you know, grab a couple of ingredients, and the idea is to bring a good amount of components to that dish, okay? And you want to try to think colors, flavors, textures, okay? If instead of the cucumbers, I thought, well, you know, I'm gonna have some tomatoes here, and then we'll do some red bell peppers, okay? Red and red, okay? So right off the bat, there is no color contrast. There is a little bit of texture contrast, which is okay, okay? But again, the red against the red wouldn't do it for me. I could substitute the red bell peppers for the tomatoes, and that'd be great, okay? Because then I'd have my red and my green, okay? So that's how you start to think of like ingredients, you know, which ones kind of go together. All right, so now I'm going to put this down here a little bit. My next ingredient here is a little bit of red onion, okay? So now with this, I am adding a purple color. I am adding a spicy flavor, and I am adding a probably sort of a medium, you know. So texture-wise, I'm not adding anything, but certainly color and flavor-wise, I am. All right. My next ingredient here is, I'll show you what this is kelp noodles. Anybody ever play with these guys? So kelp noodles they're made from sort of a seaweed kind of a thing. They have this sort of translucent color, this noodle sort of shape, okay? And they're actually crunchy, believe it or not. So when you bite on them, they're like, you know, so they're kind of cool in that way. And they're also, because it's a seaweed product, they add a slight salty flavor to the thing, okay? So now I have 4 ingredients here.
Do you soak them?
Do we soak them? No, they come in like this. So this is why I brought them in with the bag. So I open it, and then there's a bunch of liquid that they sit in, so that we dump out. And that's how we get rid of a good amount of the sodium in there. They're a little bit saltier than we would like, but because they're gonna be combined with all this other stuff, we bring down the sodium to sort of a good level.
Can you rinse the noodles?
You can rinse them, but I found out that once you rinse them, they lose that crunchiness. So that's why I just simply dump out the liquid.
Is there different types of kelp?
There is different types of kelp. You can find kelp powder, kelp granules, and those are more of a green sort of color, more like a seaweed color. These, I'm not sure how they turn them into a translucent whitish sort of color. I would imagine that there is different types of kelp that are used as well, you know. So
Where do we get them from?
these you can buy at like a Whole Foods, Trader Joe's kind of a thing. So they're nice. Okay, so 4 ingredients: tomatoes, cucumbers, onions, kelp noodles. All right, now let's count. Red, green, purple, translucent, you know,
White.
color, white. Okay, so there's 4. Then we have tart, savory, salty, spicy. Okay, then we have a soft, medium, crunchy texture. Okay, we got 11 things here. Okay, out of 4 ingredients. All right. Now, we are also going to add some cilantro. We're going to add some sprinkles. And who doesn't love sprinkles? Now, it is true that I already have green in here, so that may not necessarily help me out. But cilantro has a wonderful flavor, which is sort of this herbal, you know, earthy kind of thing, which I don't have in here already. I know that some of you out there hate cilantro. I'll talk about that in a second. Because I see somebody go like, oh, he just ruined it.
No, I love it.
So we'll talk about that in a second. So although I am using another green in there, because it's such a different shape, you know, the sort of small little chunks, now it's sort of a sprinkle. It can actually bounce off of, so if I take one of these and I put a few little bits of cilantro in there, you can actually see them, okay? So it's not that detrimental, but it is bringing a sort of leafy texture here, as well as this very earthy flavor, okay? So now we just added a couple other things. Now, Would anybody like to guess, you know, sort of what are we missing here?
Vinegar or lemon juice.
Dressing.
Yeah, sour.
Okay.
Sour.
Lemon.
Lemon. Okay, so why did you say vinegar or lemon?
Because that's how I make it.
That's how you make it. Okay. Good. I'm going to explain to you why you make it that way. Anybody else have an idea?
Sour acid.
Sour. Okay. We don't have acidity in here, which would be nice. You make it that way often, and you probably like it that way. Okay, because acidity put together with the saltiness of the noodles and that tartness of the tomatoes, it goes really well. Okay. Plus, there's some spicy in there with the acidity. Okay. So now we're really putting this together nicely. You see how that goes? Okay, we're not thinking tomatoes, cucumbers, onions. We're thinking colors, flavors, textures. Okay, that's how you put a dish together. Or that's how I put a dish together. I never think of specific ingredients. I'm always thinking, what color is it? What flavor is it? What texture does it have? And now the next ingredient, does that next ingredient have 3 other components, or is it the same? Okay, and if it's the same, I'm gonna choose a different ingredient. Make sense? Okay. So with acidity, for a little finesse and flavor-wise, I can always add a little bit of zest in here. This, by the way, is a great way to get some that acidic flavor without actually adding acidity. Some people don't do well when something has got too much vinegar, too much lemon or lime. But if you do the zest, you can actually taste that without actually, you know, feeling it. Because sometimes that messes with people's stomachs or, you know, their lips or whatnot. Okay. So here's a good way to sort of add acidity without actually adding acidity. I don't know if that made sense or not, but. Now, since I've only added the zest, and you're thinking, oh, okay, he's got the acidity covered. What's actually missing in here? Juice. Who said that? Sir, why did you say juice?
Because that's the lemon.
Why would you think it's missing juice?
Because all the ingredients tend to be more drier and you just need something to...
You need some moisture, okay? When you're looking at this, you go, oh man, you know, that looks kind of cool. There's all these colors and there's textures kind of going on. But your mind sort of analyzes this, okay? And you go, okay, if, you know, let's say, you know, I went ahead and mixed this up, okay? And then you go, okay, that looks pretty interesting. You know, it's got all these sort of cool colors and they're all mixed together and then there's textures and those noodles are kind of cool. But your brain automatically goes, okay, if I put that in my mouth, it's gonna take quite a bit of work to chew through it, okay? And this probably be easier if you saw it up close, okay? Your eyes will tell the brain, you know, I don't see any moisture in there. You know, there's a little bit of shine missing, which means the mouth is gonna have to work quite a bit to incorporate enough saliva to, you know, pass that down, okay? So the brain might go, very pretty, don't want it, okay? But then we go, okay. I think I'll just squeeze these by hand. But once we add juice to this, there's a sort of a shine that you see on the food that your brain goes, oh, there is moisture in there. You know, I actually would like some of that, okay? Because now I know that I won't have to chew through it so hard. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So that is why you, sir, always make it this way. Because you need the moisture, you need the acidity, you need the different colors on there. All right, now as far as the cilantro goes, if you hate cilantro,
that's a genetic kind of thing. For some people, cilantro will always be the terrible thing that ruins a dish. The most common description people have for that is that it tastes like soap, okay? And that's just a genetic kind of thing. You don't have to have cilantro. You can certainly do green onions. You could do basil. You could do some tarragon. Tarragon would be great in here.
Okay.
Mint would also go really well. Chives. Okay, so the cilantro here is not making or breaking the dish. Okay, well, for those who hate it, it is breaking it, but it is not something you can't work around. Make sense?
Would parsley be perfect?
Parsley could be good in there as well. That would probably be, you know, down the list that I mentioned. That would be sort of the last one. Yep. Unless, if I wanted to do parsley, I would do it, I would just pick the leaves. I wouldn't chop them, okay? Because it would add, you know, a different sort of
It's a little bitter.
texture to it. What was the question?
It's a little bitter, the chops of parsley. Do they have bitterness?
Is parsley bitter? Is that the question?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think it's more of a earthy sort of flavor.
Yeah,
Although the stems
the stems.
are different than the leaves.
Yeah.
I don't find the stems offensive at all.
No.
I could see how people might think that the stems are a little bit more bitter. Okay, but bitter is just another flavor. Okay, nothing wrong with it if you know how to combine it, and we'll actually touch on that in a little bit. Okay, so now I've sort of mixed this all around, and if you see it up close, there's a sort of shine, a sort of glistening to it, okay? So that tells you moisture, okay? This will be nice to chew on, okay? And then there's all these colors going on, or all these flavors. There's the spicy, the red, the green, the salty, you know, all this sort of stuff going on. And it's just a simple tomato and cucumber salad, like one of the most simplest things, okay? But there is a reason why it works together, okay? Questions? Good? All right.
Would you add lettuce?
Would I add lettuce? Sure. So if I added lettuce to this, I don't think it's necessary, but if I added lettuce, for me, it would be because I'm trying to expand the volume. So let's say you guys all came for dinner and I'm thinking, I don't know if I have enough salad for everybody here. I'll throw some lettuce on it and just sort of stretch it out a little bit. That would be the reason I would add lettuce to it. But for some people, you know, the salad might be sort of the nice sort of like an iceberg lettuce. Maybe it's the cup that holds the thing. Or maybe you're just so used to having it that way that that's sort of your comfort, you know, zone for this particular dish.
Or you could have it on the side too.
You could have it on the side. If you don't have the kelp noodles and you take some iceberg or romaine lettuce and you know, do a thin slice, those could be your sort of crunchy noodly texture.
Olives, a famous sort.
Olives, not in here. Too salty.
I thought any kinds, maybe there is a
Yeah.
kind that it's not salty.
But the reason people like olives in a salad is because they bring the salty component, okay? So what happens is when your mouth is chewing this and the taste buds are sending the signal to the brain, okay? It's telling the brain this is sour, savory, spicy, salty. Wait, no, it's salty, sour, savory, and savory. No, wait, it's savory, spicy, you know, and so all these combinations start going on. Okay, so out of this simple 5 or 6 ingredients, I can't remember how many we got, there's all these combinations that your brain goes through because, you know, the sequence of flavors that your brain is registering is a lot, okay? So for example, if you only have 2 ingredients, let's say we only have the onions and the lime, okay? Your brain goes, well, this is spicy and sour, or it could be sour and spicy. That's it, okay? 2 ingredients, 2 flavor combinations. At that point, your brain goes, what else you got, okay? Because I'm not entertained. You add a 3rd ingredient. So now we have tomatoes, limes, and an onion, okay? At that point, it goes, okay, this is tart, spicy, sour, or it could be spicy, sour, tart, or it could be tart, spicy, sour, or sour, tart, spicy. Okay, so essentially, every time you add an ingredient, the combinations sort of multiply. I think it goes from 2 to 6. I think. I did the math once, and I should remember. But every time you add an ingredient, there's that many more combinations that you can go through, okay? And that's how your brain can be entertained as you add more flavor profiles. If you add more colors, then your eyes are like, ooh, more interesting, okay? And if there's more textures, more different textures to it, it just keeps you entertained. It's not like Jello, for example. I hate Jello because there's nothing to it. It's just soft. You chew it, and that's it. It's boring. To me, it's boring. It's not that I don't like the flavor necessarily. It's just boring. There is no contrast in there other than the squishy sort of thing. Okay, but something like this, different textures. Okay. Yes, sir.
So do you always try to make it with the least amount of ingredients possible?
I like to get about 5 ingredients. That's sort of the sweet spot.
When I make, I put 15 different stuff.
Ooh, yeah, no, nothing wrong with that. I probably, if I wanted to push this a little bit further, I might add some toasted pumpkin seeds, because there is something that I'm missing here, which is crunch. Okay, I am missing I'm not crunch. I am missing, sort of a toasty, nutty sort of flavor in here. Okay, because the crunch I got with the noodles. Okay, either that, or I would sprinkle a little bit of cayenne pepper. Okay, the onion does have that spiciness to it, but once it sort of marinates with the lime, it sort of mellows down quite a bit. So a actual spicy, heat on your lips kind of thing. That would, jalapenos, sure. Yeah, so that would be good. But I wouldn't really go past that. I'm not sure, what the other 10 ingredients that you would add. Yeah. I think that 5-6 ingredients is a nice sort of sweet spot. There's enough flavor combinations to keep your brain entertained with that. Okay. Nothing wrong with having a dish that has 10, 15, even 20. When you start getting into like the curries of the world, and there's all these roots and the lemongrass and the ginger and all these other things going on, perfectly fine. But sometimes a little bit less is more, okay? Because to me, when there's just that many ingredients, it also becomes work for your brain trying to figure out what it's actually happening.
You get lost.
Okay, there's you get lost sometimes. When in here, as you see it, you can see about 5 ingredients. It looks great, tastes great, great texture, and all the information goes from the taste buds to the brain to everything. Is like, yeah, we got a good thing going on here. Okay, I like it. I know what it is. I see it. I taste it. Okay, make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the size of the thing, do you would you cut things smaller, or is that like?
You could. What happens is, because I'm making a large amount, the smaller I would, the more they crush each other. Okay, so for it to hold its own weight, I like them sort of a little bit larger, so to speak. However, if I was going to do this for only 2 people, I could certainly go smaller, and it'd be fine. Okay. I could maybe slice the tomatoes instead of this sort of quarters. Same with the cucumbers. Maybe I cut them in strips versus this sort of angle shape. I could do this exact same salad and make it look, give it about 5 different looks, or maybe more, just by the way I cut them. If that makes sense. That also adds another dimension to the whole thing. Okay. When it's cut differently, it feels different as you chew through it. Okay, so the texture changes, which means it's not exactly a whole new salad, but it is newish. Make sense? All right, so let me get rid of this, and then I'm gonna go get that quinoa, and let's see how much attention you guys were paying.
How long will that last in the fridge, would you say?
This should last probably 3-4 days. After that, what's going to happen is the acidity and the limes is going to start breaking down the other ingredients quite a bit. The saltiness in the kelp noodle will start to draw out the liquid from the tomatoes and the cucumbers. Okay, and after that third and a half day, it's starting to get a little soggy. Okay. Another reason why I like them in larger chunks, because you can hold the texture a little bit longer. The smaller you cut them, the faster the moisture gets drawn out of each piece. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I will be right back. As I clean up, can anybody tell me what this looks like? This is the quinoa, by the way. But what does it look like to you when you see it?
Brown rice.
It looks like brown rice? Uh-huh.
Cookie dough.
Cookie dough? Who said cookie dough? I'm sure it was.
Having hallucinations. That's what I was going.
Anybody else? Any other opinions on what this looks like?
Yeah, it doesn't look so tasty.
Okay.
It looks
Why?
a little boring.
It looks boring.
Yeah.
You know what it looks like to me?
Like porridge.
Porridge? Sure. But, I think when you say porridge, that's sort of a word that says, sloth. Maybe for some folks. To me, this has the look of a 70s carpet.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, if you just look at it and if you didn't know that this was quinoa and it was just sort of laid out on the floor, you're like, that's a carpet from the 70s. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There is a little bit of visual interest because this is a mostly the yellow quinoa or white quinoa they call it, but it's got a little bit of the red and the black mixed in with it.
Yeah.
But it's just this how soon can we get rid of this kind of a thing, this old carpet. Okay. So we have to give it a fresh look. We have to make it look interesting. The sequence of events happens like this. When somebody puts a dish in front of you, what's the first thing that goes to it? Your eyes. Okay, so that's sort of the first judge. And if your eyes say, yes, that looks interesting, then what?
You smell.
Then you smell. Okay. And if you pass the smell test, then what?
Taste.
Then you taste. Okay, so you guys know the sequence. Okay, I'm gonna look at it first, and if it interests me, I'll smell it. And if the smell looks, it's good, then I'll taste it. If it doesn't look good, what happens? Pass. Exactly. So how many of you would like a big bowl of this? You would. One person out of the whole group. Okay. So we got to make it more interesting. So again, what were the 3 things that we talked about? Texture, color,
And taste.
and flavor. Okay. So combination of texture, colors, and flavors. Okay. So what do we have here right now?
Texture.
What is the texture?
Check carpet.
It's got this sort of a chewy
Yeah,
texture.
chewy.
What is the flavor?
Mild, earthy.
Earthy.
Yeah.
Quinoa has a sort of earthy grass
Yeah.
kind of thing. Color,
Brown.
brown, or beige. Okay. Nothing wrong with any of that. Okay, that just means that is what we're starting with.
Yeah.
Okay. So now, What we put in here cannot be beige, it cannot be earthy, okay, and it cannot be, or it should not be that sort of chewy texture. Follow me?
Yeah.
Okay, so first things first. We're going to add green. No problem. Green, bitter, okay.
Arugula.
Arugula, yes.
Spice.
And,
Spicy.
yeah, spicy.
Yeah.
Green, bitter, and leafy. Okay? So now I've added 3 more things to this. Okay? So now if I go ahead and mix these two. Hello.
Hi.
Does it suddenly look more interesting?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Does it look interesting enough to say, yes, chef, give me a big bowl of it?
No.
Yeah.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
We're, it's got ways to go. But,
That's
It's-
not hot, right? The quinoa?
say again?
Is it hot? Is it
No. It's not hot.
room hot?
That's why I didn't bring it along with everything else, because I was waiting for it to cool down. So it made quite the jump. It really did, except not long enough. Okay. All right. So now we're going to add. These are kata oranges, okay, which are delicious. Now,
Here they are again.
kata oranges. So what did I just add? It was not oranges.
Sweet.
Sweets, yes.
Color.
What color is it?
Orange.
Orange. And
So,
no, these are sweet.
Sweet.
These are no. Kata oranges are sweet.
Yeah.
Hardly any acidity. If I was adding regular oranges, yes, but these particular ones, very, very sweet.
So it's juicy a texture?
Yes.
Yeah.
Juicy is a texture.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So the thing we did with the lime earlier,
Yeah.
okay, that's what we added. Okay. So now, add a little bit more. Did it get more interesting?
Yes.
Yes, it did.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting enough to eat.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Getting better.
I would say interesting enough to say, what is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Somebody who isn't here, watching me add every ingredient might say, it looks interesting. What is it?
Yeah, and it depends on what you serve to that. That could work as a good complement or condiment.
It could, yeah. We're not done with it,
Yeah.
okay? But the point is, somebody might be like, what is it? I don't want it. Yeah, I'm just curious. What is it? Okay? All right. Next is, what else did I bring? I brought some green onions
yes.
Oh, yes.
because now I have this sort of, now the green isn't doing me any favors here because I already had the green in there, okay? However, green onions have this really cool thing that, you get these sort of rings, these little tiny donuts. Shouldn't say that word here, maybe. But, you get what I'm saying. It's visually, you can see through it. And that's kind of cool, okay? It's also giving me this slight sort of spicy and a very, very mild level, okay? Green onions have this very mild manner to them. But we can add a little bit more spice by adding some of the red onions, okay? But now if I mix it, now what are you thinking? Now I'm thinking, let me have a little bit. I'm curious as to what it tastes like, okay? Or you might go, do that smell thing. Or you go, let me smell that, okay? So we went from this 70s carpet look, okay, to now I have something going on here. I'm interested. I want to taste it. I may not necessarily want a big bowl of it, okay? But I'll give it a try, okay? What's missing? Crunch. Crunch could be missing. What else? Acid. We don't have any acidity in here. Okay, no acidity. Okay.
Moisture.
Moisture, we are missing a little moisture. Okay, it is missing. It does have some, and as I'm thinking, you know, every time I bite on an orange, I get this sort of flow of juice. But if I run out of oranges, you know, whatever's left, I'm like, ugh. Okay, so see how what the problem is? Okay, so what could we add to this to help fix that?
Lemon juice.
Lemon juice could be one. Okay, so that would take care of the acidity and it would bring more moisture to it.
Radish.
Radish would not add any moisture, and it would have this sort of bitter sort of flavor, which the arugula is already bringing in. It would give me a little bit of red, which would be nice, and white also. So those chunks of white would be nice.
And crunch.
And crunch. So at that point you decide, is the white and the crunch enough to justify coming in even though the bitter is already there and it's not adding any moisture? Okay. And at that point you kind of make your own judgment on that. Because maybe radish would be good for you. For somebody else it'd be like, no, you know, what I really need is some moisture in there.
Would like a white balsamic?
A white balsamic would be good, yeah. You wouldn't see it, but again, the acidity and a little bit more moisture would be good in here, absolutely. What else?
Maybe the orange juice, more orange juice.
More orange juice,
Yeah.
absolutely. I could say, well, you know, we dice these fancier cutter oranges, which are more expensive. Let me bring like 3 or 4 regular oranges, just cut them in half and squeeze the juice in there.
That's a good idea.
That will give me more moisture and it will also give me a little bit more acidity, which I actually don't have in here because these oranges are just very sweet. Okay? So that's good. You guys are thinking in terms of colors, flavors, textures. That's good. You see how that we don't necessarily need a recipe to just sort of work this through? Okay? All right. I'm going to hope and pray that when I walk over here, oh, tiny, look. I have the tiniest bit of rice vinegar in here. It's probably like a 1/4 cup. So that just added a slight bit of acidity in there. You could always add a little bit of cold vegetable broth just to make it more moist. Okay? So, because if you think, okay, I'm gonna add some vinegar in there, and then it's like, okay, there's gonna be a point where you have the right amount of acidity in there, but not enough moisture. But if you add enough vinegar to give it the moisture it requires, then it's gonna be way too freaking acidic, okay? So there is a balance there. Again, we could add a little bit of broth in here just to make it a little bit wetter. Does that make sense?
Would you add some kind of salad dressing?
You could. However, as I was sort of trying to put this particular demonstration together, I was trying to think, dressings are amazing. You know, a good dressing can turn a mediocre dish into a winner, okay? Because what that means is that you have to make the dish, in this case the salad, and then you have to make the dressing. So now you have to do 2 things to get one. Make sense? So sometimes I was trying to, you know, give you guys ideas on how to put together a couple of salads without the need of a dressing. If you have it, great. But if you don't, and if you're pressed for time, you're pressed for ingredients maybe because there's only so much in your pantry, can we still put a salad together without a dressing? And the answer to that is yes. Okay. All right. Something else somebody mentioned back there that we didn't have in here? Crunch.
Yeah.
There is no crunchiness in here. Okay. So for that, I brought a little bit of toasted cashews, chopped up. Okay. So now I could add some of this. They're hard to see a little bit because they mimic that sort of color of the quinoa. Okay. But But if you see them up close, you can tell there's not the same thing, okay? And if you were to smell them and then you suddenly get that nutty toastiness aroma out of it, you're like, ooh, there's something else in there, okay? So we could add, again, those toasted pumpkin seeds that I mentioned earlier, but it could also be some jicama. Jicama could bring a white component that I don't have in here, plus a crunchy component, okay? So if you like that crunchiness, but you don't want to do nuts because of the calorie intake, some jicama would be great, okay? What else? It could also be other nuts, certainly some walnuts, some pistachios, pecans, okay? We could also add, what could we add in here? Maybe something chewy, like some dried cherries or dried cranberries, okay? A texture that I don't have in here, and although they do have that sweetness, with the orange, that dark color of a dried cranberry or a dark cherry is something that we don't have here, okay? So it's sort of like once you have your 5 ingredients and then you're thinking maybe add a 6th, a 7th one, you start to count, okay, if you come to the party, what do you bring? And then you go, flavors, colors, textures. If you bring 2 things, sure, come on in. If you only bring 1 more something to add to the party here, like come back another day, okay? You see what I mean? At that point, you sort of make your judgment as, is it worth bringing this particular ingredient, even though it's only bringing 1 new thing to the dish, or if it's bringing 2, okay? At that point, you make your own judgment, if that makes sense. Yeah? Okay. So yeah. Flavors, colors, textures.
Sorry. Would you substitute tomatoes for the oranges?
You could, yeah. But at that point, I'm losing my sweet factor, which then would make it even more enticing to bring in those dried cranberries or those dried cherries, okay? Okay. If you don't have watercress, you could certainly do some, if you don't have arugula, you could do watercress. You could do some endive, spinach, okay? Spinach in here would take the bitter out, but it would bring a salty component in here. To me, spinach has a salty flavor to it, okay? And then at that point, he might think, okay, now that the arugula is gone and there's no bitter in here, maybe a few chopped up radishes. That would give me the crunch and it would give me some white and the bitter that is no longer here, okay? So at that point, radishes might be a great item to add here, okay?
It doesn't need something a little more spicy.
You could, there is no spice in here.
Yeah.
The onions maybe, but certainly if you wanted to add some serranos, jalapenos, any sort of spicy ghost peppers, Carolina Reapers, whatever you want.
I'm just thinking maybe some olives.
So in every meal you try to have all the tastes?
No, I don't. It's not necessary to cover every single thing. Again,
But normally you try to get, 5, 6?
I think if you have 3 of each, 3 colors, 3 flavors, 3 textures, that's 9 things. That's sort of the minimum. If you go, 18, that's probably as much as I want to have. All right. Questions?
I have
Yes.
one question, it's maybe a little different. I tried kale once and it was bitter.
It can be.
What can you do? How do you know which is the one that's not bitter?
All kales are bitter.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, they're just
So
have
how
like.
do you kind of supply it?
I would go for a what's called a dino or a lacinato kale. That's probably the most mellow of all the kales.
Okay.
green kale, that one that's sort of curly, like curly parsley kind of thing, that's the strongest.
That's what I tried.
Oh, well, see, there you go.
But, yeah, I thought, I can't eat that, you know.
If I gave you a handful of this and say, you chew on this handful of arugula, what do you think would happen?
It would be bitter.
It would be very bitter. You're like, oh,
Yeah,
you
I
probably
think that too,
you probably chew it twice and then spit it out because it's just very intense, too strong. Okay,
Yeah.
it's when you start combining those other flavors together that you get contrast in a dish. Okay.
Okay.
So even though that kale might have been very bitter, okay, you add, dried cherries in there. Now you get some sweetness with that, okay? And you add maybe some, or maybe strawberries. I don't know. And then you add maybe a little balsamic vinegar, okay?
Does that kind of help?
Yeah, okay. So once you start adding to that bitterness something else other than the bitter, it's not as bad. Okay, so what happens is, if I give you some of this, you chew it twice, you spit it up, and then I say, okay, try it again, except this time, we're gonna do a little squeeze of lime on it, okay? You might be able to chew it maybe 4 or 5 times before you're like, oh, okay, enough. But then if I add, some sliced strawberries to that, you're like, oh, okay, I can actually eat this, okay? Maybe not my favorite, but I could get through it. Then if we add a 4th ingredient, you're like, oh, you know what, this is actually pretty good. Okay? So it's not that it's impossible to eat some kale. Okay, you just have to know what else to bring to it. Okay, and that's sort of the point of this particular demonstration.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Kale could have substituted for the arugula in here.
You could. So the kale would be a good substitute there for the arugula, certainly. Yeah. And it would all work. If you have everything else and you just made that switch, it would work.
So your taste, do you still taste kale as bitter, you personally?
For the green kale that we're talking about, that is more of a bitter flavor.
But do you taste that?
Do I taste it? Yes.
Because kale used to be bitter to me, but it's not anymore. And same with the arugula. I don't taste the bitter in it anymore. I think
Really?
it was the auto adaptation.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if I do that lacinato kale, that to me is different. That's more on the salty sort of thing. So different kales will have a different sort of flavor profile.
I think that baby kale, I find to be really just almost like spinach. It's so tender. But again, I've been eating it for so long that I don't really taste the bitterness of it. I get a tad at a time.
That is let me ask you this, how often do you eat kale?
Often.
Okay, so that is your body desensitizing to that particular thing.
And I eat it raw, I eat it sauteed.
Yeah. That happens.
At first I used to I thought it was bitter, and I used to saute it in balsamic vinegar and add raisins, and it was not bitter.
Which means you had bitter, and then you added raisins, which means you added sweet, and then the balsamic added acidity to it.
And sweet.
And sweet, okay? So you see, that works exactly like we just did, okay? All right. Anybody else have any other questions? We good? All right, boys and girls, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So today, I'm gonna try this. It will not have enough moisture. I might add a little bit of orange juice, and it'll be ready for you guys.
Yeah, great.
One thing that I will do is I sprinkled some of those cashews on top, so you guys would sort of get that whole nuttiness and crunch. But I would normally not add them until the end, until you guys are ready to eat, okay? Because if this sits for, a day, those nuts start absorbing moisture and the crunch starts to decrease, okay? All right, thanks everybody. All right. Okay, so that was, flavors, colors, textures. I hope you all enjoy this. Please hit the subscribe button. I am Chef Bravo, and thank you for watching.